Hello and welcome to Around the Lens episode 80. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Around the Lens is a live weekly visual journalism roundtable show. Comes at you every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I do this show almost every week with my co-host, Zach Roberts. Zach?
Hello. Hey, if you want to learn more about us, you can head on over to aroundthelens.com. Follow us on Facebook at AtL Podcast and on Instagram at Around the Lens. And on Twitter, it's a round lens.
Yes, indeedy. You're getting good at that, Zach. I tell you, you've got that down. It only took like 40 or 50 episodes, but you got it down. All right, so this week, our topic is basically going to be 360. We're just going to be talking about the content of 360 photo and visual journalism because we have a special guest this week. Special guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Of course. My name is Sarah Radel, and I am the editor of ImmersiveShooter.com, which is the go-to 360 resource for 360 and VR journalists, videographers. And I am also a 360 filmmaker. I'm actually in Columbia, Missouri right now with Story Up Studios producing some 360 videos. And my background, I taught multimedia at the University of Missouri, which is my own alma mater, and I worked in Convergence Multimedia before finding my home in 360. And I'm just really excited to be talking about all 360 today because I eat, sleep, and breathe it all the time.
That's great. What kind of movie are you working on in 360 up there?
We are doing a piece about the Women's Veterans Memorial in DC. So we are actually preparing right here, right now, and then we're leaving on Wednesday or Thursday. I will have to check my calendar before I miss my flight.
That's awesome. A regular guest and one of my best friends' mom did the paintings there. C.S. Muncie's the photographer, and I feel bad. I forget what her name is, but happy to put you in touch with him.
I'll have to check it out. You know, it's so funny. I've been to DC quite a few times, but I've never visited this monument, and that's why we're sort of showing people what it's about because it's just such a cool part of history. You don't really think about women as being, soldiers, but there are, 2.5 million of them alive today.
Yeah, and one of our former panelists, Stacey Pearsall. I don't know if you've heard of her before, but she's a well-known visual journalist who was in the Air Force, who made her name for herself doing photography, photojournalism, winning multiple Photographer of the Year awards while she was in, and now she's doing a lot of stuff with veterans and other things. So. But that's great to hear. I mean, I think that's pretty neat that you're focusing on something that most people haven't heard of. I didn't even know that existed, actually. I lived in Quantico, Virginia, just down south from D.C. So visited D.C. many times. Visited the big memorials, but I don't think I've ever visited that memorial. Where is that located in D.C.?
It's in Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I visited Arlington a few times, but I went to like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the guy who marches back and forth. I saw that. That's about it. I didn't really spend too much time there.
Well, next time you'll have to go, or you could see it in VR.
That's right. I'm gonna get my 360 headset, which if you can see it's hanging on the wall. I got two of them right there, two 360 headsets. So I'm gonna watch that on my 360 headset on my Galaxy S8.
Yeah, awesome.
Plus. But that's pretty neat. I mean, I shoot, we talked a little bit before. I showed you some of my little consumer level cameras, my Gear VR and my defunct now Gyroptic 360. So I love the concept of 360, and we'll talk more about the state of its industry. But for you doing this work professionally, like what are you using on the professional end? Are you using a myriad of cameras and then stitching them together? Or is there a super high-end 360 camera that shoots like 16K video that you just put on a tripod and turn on? Or what is the professional 360 movie producer using?
I think the professional movie producer is using something very different from on a day-to-day basis. What we're using is Freedom 360 rig with six GoPros, and we like that one. We've used it for a long time. It's been around. It was one of the first ones that people had access to. But then we also use the Zcam S1, which is really great because it's all in one, so it's automatically synced. So it's one less thing to do in the post-production workflow, which can be a pain with GoPros. So we've used the Jaunt camera for some of our productions in the past. Well, because it's an amazing camera. It costs $100,000 to buy. So we rent it or borrow it. So that one is amazing though, because it also has cloud stitching services. So you literally, you take it out, you shoot, and you get this amazing, beautiful footage back that you don't have to sit there tediously and fix the stitch lines every 10 seconds, every time something changes, every time something moves, which can be a pain in the butt. And there are a lot of cameras coming out that are just outrageous. I saw one at Cinegear that was, I think it was 10 red cameras built into a 360 array.
My God.
Which, like, I can't even fathom. Don't
That's
even
amazing.
put that in my hands. But yeah, people are just building some really crazy things. And, you know, for me, the 100,000 jaunt is about as much as I can conceptualize right now. So
yeah. Wow. Well, cool, cool. Yeah, I know it's all about the quality when you're talking about 360. You know, I remember I got the Note 4 when that came out, and I got the first, you know, I forget what it was called, the Innovator Edition VR goggles, and I saw it, and it blew my mind in terms of like just being able to look at around a photo. I thought was amazing, and then watching video was cool. But it was really tough because the video was so low quality. It was basically a 1080p video stretched around a 360 sphere. And I thought, well, this is the concept here is really neat. And I know it's going to grow and get better over time. So I was seeing the beginnings of what was going to be something great down the road. But obviously there, it was just more of a novelty. But the photos, just looking around the photos, that was spectacular because the photos were so high quality. You know, you could really see the definition depending on how they were created.
yeah, amazing photos. Video we're still working on.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I shot with this. I went to E3 last week, and I shot with this. I shot a bunch of photos and some video with it, mostly photos. And because I was trying to move around the show floor and get a quick shot and move somewhere, get a quick shot. I wasn't really impressed with the photos. It's a low light environment, and they're just kind of, you know, obviously this is still got a ways to go. It's a consumer level device, and it shows in something like that.
And you know, that camera, so the previous Samsung Gear 360 actually had like 2 or 3 times better photo quality than that one. They sacrificed a lot of photo quality on that one so that they could make the form factor a lot smaller so that the sensors were closer together. So when you're watching a headset or 360 video, it would be less parallax issue. So they made some sacrifices for that one. It was weird. It wasn't like you think every time a new camera comes out, it's going to be an upgrade on the last one, but that was more like a diversion, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they made a sacrifice, or they made a calculated decision, right? I mean, because that's, and we'll talk more about the technical aspects of it. I'm sure you can speak to it, you know, with your experience. But yeah, obviously having the lenses closer together helps with that stitching. So
yeah, most definitely.
But you know, after looking at my stuff, you know, and then reading about the technology coming out there, I was pretty impressed with this story I read about human eye level 360. You know, being able to put on a 360 headset and look around a scene just like you're looking around right now in your office or, you know, your bedroom or whatever, and everything looks as clear and sharp as if you were actually looking at it, which I think is the like pinnacle, the holy grail of making 360 sort of a viable platform. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of your experience or, you know, what you've learned about this aspect or this sort of future technology?
Yeah, well, sort of like bringing it down to like a more basic level is a lot of times people think that the cameras are the issue. And like when you're talking about a camera like this, there is, you know, some level of that being true. But there are just so many issues along the way with 360. We have cameras that are trying to produce ever higher resolutions. We're limited by our phone's resolution for mobile viewing. We're limited by our headset resolution. So like, for example, Rift is 2160 by 1200. Like, so anything that you do beyond that, it's basically 1080 per eye. And so anything you do beyond that is sort of, you know, a little bit to an extent lost in translation. But then you also have the issue of being able to deliver that content. Like we live in a society where we want to stream things. I cannot tell you the last time I downloaded something to put on my phone. And that's sort of what you need to do to have a really great experience in, you know, 6K, 8K, higher and higher levels. So I just feel like we're sort of up against a wall on all sides, and it's sort of, we're inching forward at this point, but I think we're going to hit a moment where all the walls are just going to expand, and then what you're talking about, what you need to say, top into a headset and say, oh my God, this is amazing. We're going to cross that threshold, and it will become something that people want to do every day, but we're just not there yet. So it's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of difficult, but there are also other things that you have to consider too. Like, people ask me what camera to buy a lot of times, like, should I buy a stereoscopic camera? Should I buy a flat camera and just focus on resolution more so than stereo? And it's just, the industry is in such a weird place right now because 90% of people who are watching 360 content are watching it on mobile or desktop. They're not watching it in a headset. So like, you have to try to serve both audiences, but then the viewing patterns are so different. With a headset, you want a really long shot. Like, having a 15-second shot is nothing, because the viewer wants to sit in it and look around and get acclimated and figure out what's going on before they hop to the next spot. But if you're watching 360 on YouTube, totally different. You're going to want maybe 5 seconds for a shot compared to 1 or 2 for, fixed frame. So it's just a very different ball game right now, I guess I would say.
So what would you say is the biggest bottleneck towards increasing 360 quality, and how do we overcome that?
I've seen a lot of really cool solutions that sort of, like one that I wrote about a few months ago. Visbit can deliver 4K video now at 1080p bandwidth, and like things like that, like the way that we're doing our CubeMap projections are getting much, much better. So to me, I honestly think that a lot of the bottleneck comes from the hardware, the headsets right now. So HTC came out, like everybody thought they were going to announce the Vive 2 at CES, and then they just announced a bunch of accessories. And it's sort of, when they sat down and explained their rationale for that, they were saying, we don't want to push out another headset until we have something that we can remarkably improve upon. And the technology that we need to remarkably improve upon, in particular the resolution, they had said, just isn't there yet. And so I think that that's sort of the thing that needs to fall into place, because like we were talking about, these 10 red cameras, obviously not everybody's going to have that, but like 10 red cameras in a 360 array, like, you don't have resolution problems there from a camera perspective. So yeah. But how are you going to deliver that is the question.
10 years down the road, when they actually, have the technology to watch that, 32K really video. What's that?
Yeah, I said it'll be really cool then.
Yeah. So do you think that, like, for instance, the technology mentioned in this story talked about how, the way they get around this loophole or this bandwidth issue is to, I guess, essentially, in theory, track the eye movement, and you only focus on the 2 degrees or so that your eye can actually focus on. But that part you're focusing on is super duper high resolution. You can read the text on something that's all the way across the room. Do you think that this technology will find its way into, the next levels, next generations of 360 tech? Like, for instance, I know on a smaller scale, when I watched Facebook video in 360, only the area that I'm looking at is in high resolution. All the rest, if I turn my head, it's all in low resolution, and then it turns to high resolution when I actually turn my head. So do you see this technology being integrated into 360 content in the next few years, or, is it more like vaporware?
I think as far as field of view adaptive streaming is, I'm looking here and it's clear, and then I turn here and then it takes a second and then the resolution pops back up. That's at play on a lot of different platforms right now, just to sort of help with some of the bandwidth issues. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about the piece that you're talking about Varjo Technologies headset, is they essentially put a higher resolution screen at the center of your field of vision, so that you can have that super crisp 70 megapixel, experience. But from what I read, and granted, I have not tried the headset myself yet, but from what I've read of the people who got to go to the media event, it was, you could see the line between the high res screen and the lower res screen around it. So I think that there's definitely a ways that for them to go before that is going to happen. And obviously, like, they're sort of starting at a commercial level, like, if you want to train your employees across the world, you know, you can send them this headset and we can give them this really high quality experience. So I think there's a long way to go before that's in the hands of, like, before you're hanging that headset on your wall behind you. But I mean, it's definitely a good first step. It's trying to get creative and work around the solutions so that VR doesn't die, that it's not the next 3D TV.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that in a second. Zach, do you have any comments on this story before we move on? Any comments from the Zach side? The Zach attack?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second there. No, I'm a complete and total newbie when it comes to anything 360. So I will maybe occasionally ask, but I don't even know the questions to ask. So
all I know is
you're listening in.
Your experience with 360, Zach, as far as I know, is you're annoyed by the people who bring the 360 cameras on tripods to your protest shoots and getting all your shots, right?
Because they have to shove it right in front of the line and then block the whole press array because clearly they're more important. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
But that's honestly.
Oh, go ahead. I said I still love the video of Angela Merkel in, you know, Germany's prime minister, I think, when she's like stops in the middle of a press conference and is like, "What is this?" And it's a 360 camera, and she's like looking at it, and you know, people
Yeah.
think when we like set it up and walk away and go hide behind rocks and trees and whatever, people like think that we're setting up a bomb.
Yeah.
People ask if we're Google Street View, like.
Yeah.
People are really not sure about these 360 cameras yet.
Well, the problem is they all look completely different, and it's not like a standard camera. They look like a ball, you know, it's like it's anything from exactly, yeah. I mean, at least
this thing looks like a bomb. If anything looks like a freaking bomb, this thing, let me tell you.
Let me just put this thing here with a light stand or a tripod and then run away so I don't get in the shot. Exactly. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I felt like a criminal every time I would set up my camera on a tripod because I set it on a 5-second timer, so you don't see my hand in every single shot. So I set up on a timer, then walk away from it, and people are like looking at it, looking at me, like wondering what they should be doing. So they get down, hide, you know.
Yeah, we get that all the time. I have so many shots of people looking at the camera like it's a bomb. It's fun to edit around.
Yeah, I know, right?
That seems like it'd be a perfect Tumblr for some reason. People looking at
there you go.
People looking at VR cameras, weird, just yeah.
Weirdest captures, yeah. Oh man.
All right, well, let's talk about the state of 360. So, you know, obviously we're all excited. Well, me and you are excited. Zach's kind of like cautiously, like optimistic, maybe. I hope. I don't know. We can ask Zach, you know, kind of what is his sort of opinion of it, but. You know, what I want to know is, you know, obviously you're the insider. You cover this stuff for a living. What is the state of 360 right now? Is it kind of on the upswing? Is it on the decline? Is it stagnating? Because I think, you know, again, this is only from my outside viewing of the situation. It seemed like there was a lot of interest in it at first, but it's sort of, I would say, calmed down a little bit or died down a little bit, or it's kind of gone down in the background. Like, you know, there's still people doing it, but it's not super duper mainstream. I mean, you got people like Casey Neistat and some other, you know, big names who are trying to push it. You know, I think Samsung has been probably the biggest proponent of 360 in the world. I can't, you know, maybe Google, you know, is going to maybe push their own camera down the line. But really, it seems like it's a bunch of these little companies doing their little projects on their little Kickstarter and trying to make something happen, trying to capture this space while it's still young in its infancy. But please, you know, tell us about your inside knowledge about the industry.
Yeah, you know, from like a camera manufacturer perspective, the industry is just weird right now because, you know, there have been a lot of cameras that have come out from, you know, more well-known camera companies that have just floundered. And then there are camera companies that have come out of nowhere, like Insta360 in China, and they have, you know, sort of taken things by storm, or Zcam. I mean, we will always love our GoPro rig, you know, we still use it all the time, but the Zcam has just really made some remarkable improvements on the workflow process. They're also based in China. They brought their prototype to Photokina last year, And now that is the camera that everyone at my level of production is buying. It's just crazy. But I do think that the camera market is changing fast though. And speaking more about like the industry as a whole, I think that your description of it was pretty accurate. It was really hot for a while, and then it sort of cooled off. And it's what the woman I'm working on this project with, Sarah Hill from Story Up Studios, has coined as like VR winter. All of these cheaper cameras came out, and everybody started producing this content that was like really low quality and posting it on Facebook and YouTube. And people started watching it, and they thought, oh, this 360 VR thing just really isn't for me. I don't like it. We're not realizing that, you know, there are so many different levels of quality that, you know, they're getting the lowest quality experience. And I think that that's an important experience so that people can get familiar with the concept. But it's, you know, the fear is that it's going to be people's first experience and then they will stop. And like that VR winter was sort of motivated by these lower quality cameras that are like opening the industry, but also sort of like in a way stifled it. So, I mean, I'm all for them. I think that they're wonderful. I think that we need to play with it, but it is sort of a dead time. And I think that it will be a dead time until, you know, the next generation of headsets comes out. Like the cameras are great, but we want to produce stuff for a headset. You know, we're tired of producing stuff for YouTube, knowing that we are so constrained by, you know, that experience. So we want to produce stereoscopic, you know, 8K beautiful content, and we're ready to do that, but the industry isn't ready for us to do that. So
yeah, I would say, I mean, I have no interest in watching a 360 video like on a flat screen on my computer on YouTube. That has a zero personal appeal to me. Like that's like work. Now I have to work. I have to click a mouse and like move it around a screen. I don't have time for that. I can turn my head, sure, all day. That's what I want to do. But to like what, it's like, and the thing is, like, I don't know. I mean, I think Samsung and YouTube are playing nice with each other. I believe. I think, yeah, actually, you can watch 360 YouTube videos in the Samsung Gear VR via the browser, I believe. Beyond that, though, I don't know if there's an app for it, but you can do that. So I have played around with that as well. But it's still, it's tough, yeah, because I mean, obviously, you want the consumer level stuff because you want people to adopt the platform. But it is tough because it's so low quality sometimes. And then you know, it's like I said, I looked at the photos I shot from E3 and they were just underwhelming. You know, it's like I wanted to feel like I was there again. And I looked at the photos and it's like I'm looking at through foggy glasses or something like that. Or, you know, my vision is poor. So I was just kind of like, I mean, I'll still use it. And again, I don't see this as this isn't the end all be all for this platform. There's going to be a new camera that comes out, a new Samsung Gear 360. And I'm hopeful that, you know, they'll just get better and better over time. You know, this is just the beginning, just like with regular cameras increased in resolution. You know, we started out with 4 megapixel and 5 megapixel and 6 megapixel. And now we got 20 megapixel and 36 megapixel. It's just going to get better and better over time. It's just, you know, I don't think the market is ever going to go away. You know, it's just, will it expand? You know, I hope so. Hopefully, as it gets better and more, you know, easier and easier to put bigger, higher quality content out there, I think you're just going to, you know, see it out there. And I love Samsung for continuing to push the market forward. Zach, you know, you don't have a 360 camera. Is there any reason why, you know, it's not something you want to go into, or, you know, have you looked at the market? Is there anything, you know, from an outsider's perspective, is there something that, you know, prevents you from going that direction, or are you not intrigued by the platform, or what is your take on it?
I mean, it's a lot to do with the price point ones that I could certainly afford look like crap. Like I've seen the quality, I've seen the, you know, seen it. So I haven't, basically I haven't gotten into it yet that way. And you know, when whatever the $1,500 model is becomes a $300 model in whatever number of years, I'll pick up that one. You know, I mean, there's a couple things that like what I'm really looking at is I'm surprised that Samsung has not come out with a phone that has the two cameras. Like, right, I don't know what the technological issue would be there, but I have a camera on the front of my phone and I have a camera on the. I don't understand how that's not automatically someone at Samsung's going, oh, the Note 17 or whatever that's coming out next week is the phone that should have that on it. I understand why Apple doesn't do it, because Apple is, you know, is 17 years behind on everything. But when it comes to that sort of tech, I mean, especially camera tech and stuff like that. But I mean, to me, one of the big problems too is, like, a lot of Americans, I live in a rural area, and our internet blows. I mean, right now I'm out on Cape Cod, and I don't know if what the quality is. I can see a lag and everything like that. And this is just, you know, I don't even know if this is 1080p, you know, broadband through the router here. So, you know, we talk about everybody wants streaming, nobody wants to wait to download, nobody wants to do that. You know, this whole, I think that there's so many places, especially in this country, that tech is held back by the fact that our internet blows almost everywhere around the country. Even if you have Fios is like most of Europe. Like Albania has better, no, not to bash Albania, but Albania, not exactly like the, you know, the preeminent country that when people talk about being in the future of technology, has better internet than America does. So it's like, how, you know, to me, that's the big thing. And I now that the FCC has changed over, I don't really have a hopefulness for it, because I mean, there's so many things, whether it just be, I mean, just even live streaming my, you know, on my camera phone, Verizon finally got unlimited. Well, it's unlimited, you know, it's 22 gigs and then it slows down. But I mean, like, there's so many limits of it has nothing to do with the actual hardware even. You know, I mean, I think there's like the infrastructure in our country needs to almost change before a lot of this stuff is able to be usable. I mean, it's amazing what New York Times is doing and all these places are doing. But, you know, I mean, and it's great because they're able to, you know, a lot of, you know, middle America, whatever, what is it, 60% of America doesn't have passports. You know, if I think it's actually more than that. But, you know, this technology would be a really, really great way to immerse someone into it. And, you know, I mean, I'm dying to do it because, you know, especially protests and, you know, like, I always get really close into the action. You know, I've had camera lenses bashed by batons and stuff like that. So it's like, having one of these cameras would be fantastic, because I think people could really feel what people who are there feel, as opposed to the kind of wide usual, you know, TV network news. You get this wide camera shot of the stuff going on and nobody really gets the emotion of it. But again, it's like, until it becomes affordable, and B, you know, some guy in Kansas can actually stream this thing. It's kind of I guess it's a chicken or the egg, or tortoise and the hare. I don't know what the metaphor is, but you know, it's that issue. I mean, that's why I haven't dropped the, you know, I guess $1,500 probably for the at least usable model that I would have to do. So.
Yeah, and I don't think your opinion is unpopular. Oh, sorry, I'm getting an echo that's making me feel a little bit weird about this. Okay, I don't think your opinion is unpopular. That's, you know, a lot of people feel that way. And it's interesting because, like, GoPro sort of was one of the big players at the outset of the industry, and then they sort of lost a little ground to some other camera manufacturers who are maybe pushing things forward a little bit more so. But now they're coming out with their Fusion camera, and the way that they're pitching it is that it's an over capture camera. So you can capture 5.2K 360 video, but then you can punch out, you know, flat, fixed frame 2D video at 1080p. So then if you're like mountain biking down, you know, well, a mountain, I'm not sporty, but if someone wanted to do that, they could do that. And you could punch out fixed frame 1080p video, and you know, if something cool happens here, you capture it. If something cool happens there, you capture it. And so it's sort of a way for the 360. Sorry, echo. It's sort of a way for the 360 industry to live on, even if people can't watch 360 content right now.
All right, we got through that. Yeah, no, I mean, you know, talking to the quality aspect that you mentioned, Zach, you know, in terms of that being a barrier to entry for you, or, you know, for anyone really, I wouldn't worry too much about the quality. I mean, the video quality isn't as bad as I think the still photo quality, at least on the Gear 360. I mean, I play with the video. I think there's a little bit more forgiveness in video just because it's a motion medium. So, I mean, you know, if you're looking to experiment with it, I think especially you being like in covering protests and stuff like that, you know, I was just thinking to myself, how would I use the 360 in protests? You know, I could definitely see myself attaching it to perhaps like my hat or something, and just perhaps even live streaming that, connecting to a battery pack through the USB-C and just live streaming while I'm at a protest. You know, just similar to how some protest photographers wear a chesty with a GoPro attached to it to make sure they're, you know, capturing video all the time. I could see almost the same thing with the 360 camera, you know, and then you're obviously putting yourself, you know, you can sell that later as a product, perhaps to some 360 video distribution company, you know, whatever's out there. But yeah, I wouldn't let the, you know, again, because it's like these higher end stuff. I mean, it seems like it goes from super duper low end, like the Insta360 Air, to super duper high end, like the $10,000 camera we're going to talk about here in a minute. Like there's very little like middle ground. I mean, I was really having high hopes for the Nikon Key Mission 360, but you know, from what I hear, that's a complete piece of garbage. So
GPS signal lost.
And you know what? I think this summer is sort of the big. I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of changes this summer, because you've got 2 5.7K cameras coming out and 1 5.2K camera coming out. You've got the Yi 360 camera, which is 5.7K and can live stream, and you have the Garmin Verb 360, which is 5.7K, and I think started shipping last week. That is actually, this is so cool. I really love this fact. I didn't know this about the Verb until like 2 weeks ago. Shame on me. But you can actually control multiple Garmin Verbs from one phone. So you could set one up over there and one up over there, and you could live stream and you could, you know, switch between them if you had a switcher box or something like that. I mean, I just thought that was the coolest thing. I think it's like $800. So kind of in that middle ground.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, that it's, oh, go ahead.
So, anyways, Zach, the echo we're getting is from you, I think.
Okay.
You have headphones, great. If not, okay. So, now I lost my train of thought. But I was going to ask Sarah if she knew or had any sort of inside knowledge or anything about phone 360, because I think that's an exciting, you know, opportunity for the future. And the closest thing I've seen is the PH1 with their little 360 attachment. But I don't know if there's anything you've heard about, Sarah.
You know, I cannot remember what brand it was. It was a prototype phone. I can see if I can find it on the website. But they did put 2 cameras on one phone, aligned in such a way that you could capture 360 with it. But so far, I'm surprised that it hasn't come out, and I don't really know what the rationale behind it is. Sort of, I mean, it does seem like it should be a lot simpler than it is, but yeah, it just really needs to happen, because I love shooting with my Insta Nano and my Insta Air, because it's just so seamless. I don't have to worry about pairing with my phone and losing my connection and all of those little details. It's nice to just have everything in one, or just like worrying about transferring the files to my phone. That can be a pain. I mean, I'm ready for it to happen, and I would use it, I'm sure. Is that the one? Okay. Well, I don't know if that's the one that we covered, but there is one on our website. I don't know what I would search for because I can't remember what keyword I set it for, but it's there. Go check it out.
Yeah, the one I just brought up to the audience, or brought up to the panelists, was the Pro Truly Darling. It's, I guess, the first 360 built-in VR camera. I just found this link here while you guys were talking, but it looks ugly and big, but you know, hey, if you got it built in,
there's
you know.
One, okay, May 1st, 2017, Acer's new smartphone, Holo 360. It is the next one after the Darling. So I guess the first one from like a better known brand.
Okay.
So I think it'll happen slowly. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. Once Samsung does it, then we're good.
Yeah. Samsung seems to be first on everything in this market.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about, you know, the technology out there, you know, the latest, greatest stuff. The Varo, and again, I'm sorry, not Varo. Let me bring up the story you guys did about this 360 camera that's like super duper Kandao 3D. So again, I really know much, I don't really know what is out there in terms of the latest, greatest stuff, but this is just one that happened to be the latest story on your site. That was a neat 3D 360 camera. So why don't you tell us, since you wrote this article, a little bit about this Kandao 3D 360 Obsidian VR camera. Is this, we're going into our gear segment now. Talk to us a little bit about this camera. Is this it? Is this what you're going to get? Is this the magic? Is this the holy grail for cameras or what?
It's really hard to say because with 360, there's such a disalignment with cost and quality. I feel like most of the time, if you spend more, you're going to get better quality. But I think that some cameras have come out like the Key Mission, for example, which, got you lower quality than, say, the Samsung, which was, about half the price at the time that the Key Mission launched. So I think that there's a really big misalignment there. So I'm curious to see some more sample footage. When I was at, I guess it was NAB, I saw some sample footage. I was not, it was good. It wasn't great. I only saw one video clip, so we'll have to wait and see. But I'd be curious to see more. It's 8K stereos, or 8K flat, no, 8K stereo, 8K stereo. Sorry, it's been a while and everybody's got new specs. I think it's 8K stereoscopic video, $10,000, and they offer more, high frame rate capture. So that's interesting. But I'd say as far as, if you're going to spend $10,000, you might as well spend $30,000.
Sure. What's another $20,000? Drop in the bucket.
The camera that I was really impressed with as far as like that next level, beyond 10K, 10 grand, not 10K resolution, camera was actually the Zcam V, the Zcam V Pro, V1 Pro. It's their stereoscopic camera. And as far as stereoscopic content goes, it was the most comfortable I have seen in a while. It doesn't feel like set pieces moving in front of your eyes quite as much. There's not that flicker of motion. It just feels, it doesn't make you want to go cross-eyed. It was just very, very comfortable. So I don't know. I think it's hard. I need to see more footage from the Kandao, and it's not quite out yet, but the camera's coming out soon. So I think we'll see a little bit more. And that's another thing. In 360, you have to see user footage because you cannot expect someone, they're spending hundreds of hours stitching that footage and perfecting it and making it so that you could not possibly see a stitch line no matter how much you look for it. But I'm not going to do that. As a content creator, I don't have 100 hours to spare to make sure every single frame aligns perfectly. So I just, more so than when I worked in the 2D world, I need to see user footage to believe in a camera.
Well, speaking of user footage, the gyroptic, the Insta360 cameras that we talked about before, like I said, I had the Insta360 Air. I tried to get that to work for the Samsung Galaxy S8. It didn't work for me. I returned it, went with the Gear 360 instead. But I know that Insta360 is a good company. I think, Zach, you were trying to get a review copy of one of their cameras. Any feedback, by the way, from them on that? Oh, he's nodding his head no.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not.
No. Well, they're coming out actually with not Insta360, but Gyroptic is coming out with their Gyroptic IO for the Android platform. So maybe I can get them to give me a freebie. I don't know. We'll see, or at least a review version. But I think Insta360 again. They're making waves in the industry, and one of the cool things I liked about the Insta360 Air, when it did work for a few minutes, is that it had the 6-axis stabilization in the actual phone. It actually worked. And it was amazing because normally when I shoot 360 video, it's a hot mess because it's shaky and it's moving around. You can't turn left or right, but when the 6-axis stabilization is activated, it doesn't matter where you turn that thing or how you rotate it, you get a nice clear shot. So that's something I wish was in the Gear VR. But it is what it is. Gear 360 maybe next year, maybe they'll come down with a firmware update. But the Insta360 Pro, first impressions here. Let's see, did you write this? No, Mick Ty wrote this. But do you know anything about the Insta360 Pro.
Well, you
This
know,
is
we are, truth be told, we are crossing our fingers to get a review copy of it ourselves. Mick contributes to the site, so Robert and I have not gotten our hands on one yet for longer than a day. And, you know, we're, you know, both big believers in Insta360's Nano and Air because they're super affordable for the price. Like, you can't get a better camera option. But the Pro, you know, it has a lot of promises. The initial footage that was shared, I wasn't like totally bowled over by. It looked like there were some color issues um, and some exposure issues there. But I do think, you know, they have a really strong commitment to always, you know, providing value for their customers after just the initial purchase. Like all like the stabilization features, all of these new things that they're coming out with, they go to everybody, and it's just so wonderful to, you know, to buy a camera and know that it's only going to get better, even though that, you know, obviously new cameras are going to come out that are going to start from a better baseline. You're not, you know, stuck with what you have entirely. And like, you know, speaking more generally of stabilization, I think that that is a really interesting trend and a really wonderful thing that's happening is a lot of those lower quality, or I guess consumer grade cameras are having built-in stabilization, like the Air, the Nano, the Verb, which shoots 4K video stabilized and 5.7 if not stabilized. I don't think you can stabilize that automatically. And the Pro is obviously going to be stabilized, but also finally there are gimbals coming out that are made for 360 video capture, so that you're not like constantly banging the arm, you know, or banging the head on the gimbal arm, and it's not showing up in a big part of your shot. Like the Gimbal Guru 360 came out recently, and there's another one that I haven't tried out that's a little bit cheaper. I think it's like $219 instead of $299. That came out recently as well. I think it's Landpart. I might be pronouncing that, but they just came out with one. So I just feel like the options for stabilization are really getting a lot better. Or like even for higher end production, there's a dolly that's only $3,000 that's, you know, made for 360 footage that I'm really excited about because, you know, initially when we started capturing 360, we said, oh, we can't move. That makes people want to throw up. And like, sometimes it does, let's be honest. But if you do it right, it can be really, really cool. And yeah, and this is the by far the cheapest dolly I've seen that could accommodate a 360 camera. So I don't know. I think we'll see a lot cooler motion shots with all these new stabilization things that are coming out.
You hear that, Zach? Only $3,000.
You know what though? When you shoot with a jaunt camera and you're thinking this is worth like I could buy 10 cars with this, it's all relative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's an expensive field to be in. Just like any guy, I think high level video production, you know, if you want the highest of the high end quality, or, you know, the red cameras, you know, and that's just 2D. But all right, cool. Well, is there anything else you would like to let us know about the world of 360 cameras or 360 video production? Any hot 360 commodities, products, movies coming out that we should be on the lookout for? Anything, you know, maybe Immersive Shooter is covering or coming up to cover we should look out for on your website, immersiveshooter.com?
Well, I would say two things that I think people should know about is like, one, it's great that we get to go to conferences and watch, you know, really great 360 VR content, but we have to remember that so many people never have that opportunity. And so I encourage everyone who has a headset to sort of become, you know, a VR enthusiast and guide and sort of show people this new world so that they don't just see it on Facebook and write it off entirely from the outset. I guess like a VR evangelist, if you will. And one thing that I think is really cool is I've started to see movie theaters offering VR experiences. So they'll choose one VR experience and they'll do groups of 8 people or whatnot, and they'll pop them into a Vive or Oculus Rift headset and just see if this is an experience that we can encourage people to like go out and try. We can't encourage someone to buy a $3,000 laptop and a $1,500, you know, or a $800 headset and like $1,000 worth of accessories. But we can buy 8, put it in a theater, and, you know, give hundreds of people that wonderful experience. So So I think that's really cool. And I wish more people not in our industry would like go try that out. And the second thing is for people wanting to sort of learn 360, we are going to be producing like a master's class on 360 production for people who want to get started on it and sort of what is spatial audio and how do I capture it and how do I stitch and what are my stitching options. Like we're going to be covering all of that in the next few months because we really wish, you know, we see a lot of value in for 2D videographers in addition to 360 videographers, but right now it's hard to find help. Like when Sarah Hill, you know, who's my VR evangelist who got me interested in everything, started Color, which is the stitching software everybody uses, the tutorials were only available in French. And, you know, that was just 18 months ago. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm curious, Sarah, you know, you mentioned the Vive. What do you view VR content on?
We have a Vive here at the office, so I use that a lot. But when I'm at home, I just use the Samsung Gear. It's a good experience for the price, and there are just so many titles available on that is, you know, that make it a really competitive platform. So those are the two that I use almost just by default.
Do you have a preference of the Vive over the Oculus?
You know, I tend to choose the Vive. I really like the ease of using the hand controllers. But I haven't used the Oculus quite as much, so it might just be what I'm used to. I've only used the Oculus at conferences, which already, when you're in a headset at a conference and people are around you, you're in a very weird frame of mind. So it could also be the environment in which I have tried it. So.
How about PSVR? Have you played with that?
Haven't tried it yet, but it's on my list. I'm sure I will in just a few months here.
I got to play with it. I played with it for the first time when I was at E3 to watch a VR demo. And by the way, you know, we talk about VR with just cameras and sort of the, you know, filming and stuff, but VR interactive media like games and stuff, that is just a whole different, you know, ball of wax. I don't know if your website goes into that much, but that is like, I was just amazed by what I saw there and the level of quality that they're doing and stuff in terms of interactive VR. Is that something you guys discuss much or talk about much on your site?
We will, as people sort of apply some of those lessons learned to journalism and nonfiction. But since we work, you know, we try to provide resources specifically for journalists and documentary filmmakers, people working in the nonfiction world, whereas like most games in VR have been fiction. I think Al Jazeera did Hacked, I think it was called, which was a 360 game, but it just isn't as popular in that medium yet. So we'll go there when other people go there. But it is so cool. And like there's Sarah Jones is a journalism professor in the UK who literally does VR smells. Like I mean, people are playing with loads of crazy things. There's another haptical device where it goes behind your ears and it adjusts your balance centers in your ears. So if you tilt in VR, your body feels like you're tilting even though you're sitting still. I mean, wow. The accessories are just absurd. And that's one thing that I think is really cool is like, even though everybody's like, oh, can't wait for the Vive 2 to come out. And they're like, oh, we just got a bunch of crappy accessories. Like the accessories are cool. And people hear these things about like smelling things in VR and feeling things in VR and feeling balance things in VR. And that is what's going to make someone on the fence buy a headset. They're going to hear about these ridiculous sci-fi things and they're going to say, I have to try that. I'm buying that scent releasing necklace right now.
Have you heard about this one? It isn't out yet, but you basically stick this ice pick sized device into your spinal column in the back of your neck and bam, it's like virtual reality. You can smell the steak. You taste the wine. It's great. The robot masters are letting me know it's great. But anyways, Zach, anything else from you on 360 or VR? Any other questions you might have?
Not really. I mean, this has been actually very informative for me. So I'm going to try to reach back out to the Insta guys and see if I think I'm trying to remember what the last email was, whether it wasn't ready or they didn't have it available at the moment. But I've got a bunch of things, big things coming up that I'd really, really like to cover with it. So that, and also try to reach out to Nikon as well, because I'm a Nikon guy. So I hope that maybe the rumors about it not being that amazing are
Zach froze. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Okay. You know, I was thinking, Zach, you know, from your perspective, or from really my perspective as well, and kind of where I see VR for us as visual journalists, you know, as the photographers, the videographers who are going out in the scene. I think of this as kind of like video was for photographers, whereas, you know, it was a new thing that really we didn't know how to utilize, or we weren't really versed in. But it was something where, you know, the newsroom or the editor said, hey, go out and shoot some video while you're going and taking your stills. And we come back with some, you know, video that would be, you know, like I've seen on a local newspaper here where I live, they have the videographers shoot, or the photographers shoot video, and it looks, it's basically a B-roll stitched together, and it's very, very rough stuff. And I see this as sort of being something where, again, you have this with you and you're shooting some 360 content that you're going to throw up real quick on, you know, YouTube or something, as sort of an addendum, as a little extra on top of your, you know, your video and your photo you're shooting professionally for, you know, the content website. So I think the you know, the low price, low barrier to entry, at least for the average quality stuff, you know, the consumer level quality stuff is good enough for now. But, you know, like you said, all that $3,000, $10,000 gear is eventually going to come down to the consumer level. But
one thing I have to mention, because you guys, like, your audience is more like 2D, is Liquid Cinema is coming out with this really cool tool that I saw at NAB, where you can essentially fuse 2D media with 360 media. So you can have like a fixed frame video where you can do close-up shots and frame and basically guide your story in the same way that you've been doing for years. And then you can sort of transition into a 360 environment. So you can give people the story and you can give people the experience. And it is just the coolest. I feel like that is also going to do a lot for the industry, because it's going to help people bridge the gap from now to tomorrow. So
yeah, I think absolutely. The YouTuber MatPat did a great 360 video. If anybody's looking for something, I think an example of how 360 is done right, where it merges 2D videos, you know, in frames, and also the 360 experience. So I think that's a good use of how it should be done, or how it could be done, you know, interestingly. But I would say, you know, to kind of clarify a point, our audience here, everybody who, you know, we're about visual journalism, and that's telling stories in any way, any medium, whether it be 360 or video or photo or whatever medium I think is out there. We'll talk, you know, about things like HTML and using websites and doing different things with web and stuff like that. So it's really visually telling a story. So really happy to have you on. Happy to have your insider experience talking about the 360 aspect, 360 topic. It's again something I'm very excited about. I'm really looking forward to it from my sort of, you know, lower consumer level experience. But I have actually shot and edited 360 stories with the gyroptic 360 I had. Very simple little like home movies and stuff. But, you know, it was so awesome to, you know, shoot something and then edit it and then export it, put it on my phone. It took a little while to get actually on there, and then load it on, and find the file through the system, whatever. Anyways, but once I got it running, it was just so magical to, you know, it's like being in this world where I'm looking at my son who's running around running around me, and he's like, you know, larger than life. And it's really, I think, something that, you know, as long as, you know, more people experience it, they're going to, you know, definitely see the merit in it. So, but when we're looking forward to your video, where can people find out more about you, Sarah? Is there anything else you'd like to plug besides, obviously, you know, your website?
Well, of course, find me on immersiveshooter.com. Reach out to me there if you have questions about cameras. I'm happy to help. But also, I would encourage people to check out Story Up Studios. That's who I'm working for this week. They have really amazing content, really high quality stuff. So if you want an experience that's a little bit beyond maybe what you've seen on Facebook, I would check them out. And give
What's that website again?
It's story-up.com. Or if you just Google Story Up Studios, Columbia, Missouri, we're here.
Awesome, awesome. And I'd say New York Times seems to be putting a lot of effort into telling stories in 360, right?
Definitely. Most definitely. They are doing a daily 360 initiative, and it's teaching us so much about what works and what doesn't work in 360, for sure.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being our panelist on tonight's show, Sarah. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you. Thank you for being here. Happy to have you on and probably bring you on whenever there's some new 360 tech. As soon as that 360 phone comes out, we're gonna have you on. As soon as it comes onto the iPhone in 10 years, so we'll have you on, talk about that. That's right. But anyways, thank you again, Sarah, for coming on the show. For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens episode 80, and we are out.